Hi folks, thought I'd pop in today to talk about Rosedale 4-ply, our new yarn, second new yarn in the space of a week. It's totally not intentional, I have to say, it just kind of landed that way. But it seemed like a good time to do a video. Again, not intending to do them particularly regularly or anything like that. It just so happens that things have fallen the way they have. So I'll crack straight on. Don't need any waffle, do you really? Rosedale 4-ply, brand new sock yarn. It's a sparkly, gold sparkly 4-ply sock yarn. Here is some I wound up earlier. So I've been photographing it and I've shared photographs, but I have to say the gold sparkle doesn't show up very well in the pictures, so I'm hoping that being able to see it on video you can see that sparkle a bit better. Let me grab a skein. So that's charcoal. I'll just see if the camera will focus on it a bit better. No is the answer to that. There you go. Anyway, so you can see the sparkle in it anyway. It's a lot better on the video than it is in pictures, I have to say. You can just see it just catches the light. It's really pretty. It's fairly subtle. It's not like super in your face sparkly. If you get it under spotlights, you know, like kitchen spotlights, then it really glitters quite a lot, and sort of in the sun. I've had it hanging on the line in the sun and it really does glitter. It's just beautiful. So yeah, let me tell you about the actual yarn itself. So I'll just tell you what's on the label. So it's 80% superwash superfine merino, 15% nylon and 5% gold stellina sparkle. Now, superfine merino, being superfine, that refers to the micron count of the actual merino fibre. It's not just like random words, it does actually mean something. It's soft, basically. It's a fine, soft merino, as I think all of our merino is. 15% nylon is because it is meant to be a sock yarn. And I have to say, merino on its own, really, I wouldn't recommend for socks. You do need the nylon in, but I mean, hopefully you will be hand washing your socks anyway. So, yeah, there we go. And then the 5% gold stellina sparkle. So we did a bit of research. Only a few minutes, has to be said. You could Google this yourself. If you want more information. So this is stellina rather than lurex. Now, stellina is a metallic toned nylon thread, right? So that's what's in this. Lurex, which is what's in our Napier 4-ply, which I'll come on to in a sec, is a synthetic film with vaporized metal, sort of, I think it's coated on it, or maybe the film's coated over the metal, but it has actual metal in it, whereas this is like metal coloured nylon. So I mean, it's only a technical detail really, but obviously, you know, we like to know these things, don't we? So naturally we looked it up. Okay, so that's the fibre content. So that brings me on to just a really quick comparison between the Rosedale and the Napier, because they're quite different. I'll just find a similar colour. Right, so Rosedale, Napier. Let me just see if I can get the camera to focus. Nope. Oh, fine. I'll post pictures anyway, sort of on the blog, so that you can compare. But you can see how different it looks when they're next to each other. This, it is more subtle, definitely. I mean, like I say, under spotlights it is very glittery, but just in such a different way to the Nate. So the Rosedale, the fibres kind of stick out. They're like, they're not spun in the same way that, can you just see that there? They're not spun in the same way that that it is on the Nate. So I think with the Rosedale, it's kind of like the sparkle is just kind of combed in to the fibre. I think, I'm guessing that's why it looks like that, and it's more sort of subtle, mincing my words, and kind of a bit more randomised. Right, so whereas the Nate, the Lurex, it's like spun around the yarn, so it's very regular. There isn't much more that I can say about that really, other than to just show you. I'm just moving them about to try and catch the light a bit. Excuse me. Okay, hopefully that helps anyway. So that's the difference. Oh, actually, I have to say, the Nate 4-ply, it's a much floofier sort of yarn. Can you see that? It's kind of, it's just the way it's spun really. It's got a lot more air in between the fibres, whereas this is more kind of fine and drapey. Hopefully you can, just make that out. Sorry if it's out of focus. Okay. So like for Nate, the wraps per inch that I got was 15, which is what's on the label, whereas for the Rosedale I can get 16 or 17 wraps per inch. I've got my tool here. I've got 17 on this time I measured, but last time I measured I only got 16. So it's definitely more fine. If you've used our Pendle 4-ply or Brimham 4-ply, I think you will find this very similar to those, because it's the same sort of fibre, just with the gold in it, and it's spun in the same way, whereas the Nate, like I say, is completely different. So that's Thunder, by the way, in case you're wondering. That's the same one that I had caked up. That was a test skein. And this batch is part of the update, its debut update. So hopefully that's all helpful. I am using it, and it knits and crochets to what I would call a standard 4-ply gauge or tension. So like they're a bit silly really, but I'm making crochet eggs at the moment. They're like the most pointless thing I've ever made, but they're really addictive. Got a really bad jog there in the stripe, but you can see hopefully. So I'm crocheting those with a 2.5mm hook, and I'm stuffing them really tightly. So I would knit socks with this personally on a 2.5mm needle, which is my standard 4-ply sort of tension for me. I would knit something like a shawl or a jumper on, I usually go for 3.5mm needle, because that's comfortable for me in terms of tension, and also produces a fabric that I like. But I mean, you could go up bigger than that if that's the kind of fabric that you're going to get that you like. So yeah, like I say, it's very much a standard 4-ply. And it's spun as a standard 4-ply. There are actually 4 plies twisted together. So yeah, that's all good. It's all standard. It should be very easy to substitute in into patterns that call for 4-ply yarns. Just check your gauge as always. And for me, I always like to really look at wraps per inch. Well, we were having a conversation about this on Facebook, in the Facebook group recently. So whilst I'm on it, I'm just going to briefly talk about it. So wraps per inch is literally the number of wraps that you can fit on a tool of any type per inch. Now, it's a really good test of the thickness of your yarn, because you are literally just measuring the thickness of each strand. So it's a lot more accurate than things like yards per 100 grams and stuff like that, because they can vary according to fibre type and the way that things are spun up. There's so many variables that can affect how many metres you will get to 100 grams, and that can really throw you off when it comes to substituting yarn. So wraps per inch is the most accurate way. It's not foolproof. For example, this has been sat caked up for quite a while, and I've got more wraps on an inch than I did when I first measured it and when I first wound it up, because yarn sat in a skein is at a much looser tension than it is once it's been balled up. So this yarn really has been stretched, which is why it's coming out thinner on here. And also, you know, as with all these things, there's always room for human error, or, well, even just variance, to be honest. Like, I could have just pulled it marginally tighter, and I could probably push that along and fit a couple more strands in. So you want to measure it, I mean, it's easier said than done, but you want to be measuring it at kind of like a natural loose-ish tension, maybe at the tension that you would crochet or knit with, because that's what's, you know, that's what you will be doing with it. So it makes sense to measure your tension at that, in that same way as well, perhaps. That's just my take on it. So that's wraps per inch, and while I'm just demonstrating, the width of the tool makes no difference whatsoever. So you can do this round a pen or a ruler, because you will fit just as many strands in an inch along that pen or a ruler or anything as you will along this. The length of the strands makes no difference whatsoever. It's the width of the strands that you're measuring, which once you sort of like look at it, you're like, well, yeah, of course, but it's one of those things where you need to think about it before it kind of makes sense. So that's wraps per inch. The hardest yarns to measure for wraps per inch are fluffy yarns, because I never know whether I should be accommodating the fluff or not. But then I suppose if you would be doing when you were knitting or crocheting with it, then you should be doing on your wraps per inch tool as well. So just check my list. Want to make sure I cover everything useful, hopefully. So this is how it crochets up. Oh, turn that the other way around. Have the pretty side. There you go. That's Milburn 4-ply Time, by the way, with the stripe of Rosedale 4-ply Thunder, and that's the Rosedale 4-ply Thunder with I think a Rusty Ferret yarn. So yeah, it knits up and crochets actually into a really nice smooth fabric, just like Pendle 4-ply, as I mentioned earlier. It's smooth, it's got a decent amount of drape, lots of bounce as well, so it's, you know, it's going to be a really good all-rounder, just like Pendle 4-ply, and Brimham 4-ply actually. The merino has a little bit of shine to it. It's a good quality merino, as they all are, and yeah, I would say it kind of it comes right down the middle of being bouncy, but having enough drape for things like shawls and lace and that kind of thing as well. But equally, you could make a jumper in it. I always mention this when I talk about superwash yarns. there's this thing, people believe that with superwash yarns that your jumper will drop dramatically. When it's wet, when you wash it, yeah, if you hold it up, the bottom of the jumper will be much lower than when it was dry. So dry it flat and it'll bounce back to sort of around about the size that it was when you finished it. Or if you want to block it a lot longer, then pin it out, block it hard, and it'll bounce back a little bit, but not as much. But if you get your jumper out and it's wet and it looks enormous, don't panic. It will bounce back. So that's why we say hand wash ideally, and lie flat to dry. If you hang it, then obviously the any wool will stretch because it's very heavy when it's wet. It's wool, so it's like hanging it with weights on. So dry it flat. Where are we up to? I think I've covered actually quite a lot. Let's go for some colour combinations next. So I've dyed quite a lot of colours. Right, I'm going to just take the phone on a wander. Apologies if it's a bit wobbly. Can you see that? Let's look at the greens. Oh, check those greens out. And pinks. Okay, let's see if I can put that back in the same place that it was in. I think you were about there. There we go. So, as always, I've dyed lots of semi-solid colours. So things like this, and this, and the thunder that I had earlier, and the charcoal. So I always do, I always try to do lots of semi-solid colours because, you probably heard me say this a million times, but I just think you need them. I think you need them to show off, you know, things like cables and lace and stuff like that. You don't want super jazzy colours because they take away from your stitch patterns. But then also you've got, you know, if you want to do something with stripes, it's so much easier to stripe plainer colours compared to variegated ones. Or you might want to take something variegated like Woodpile and then frame it with something semi-solid. So like you could use those two together. That's Copper Bucket, and then that's Faded Bloom. So you can really use the semi-solid colours to frame the variegated ones, which is why I try to do a good range of both whenever I do updates. It's quite hard because obviously I'm limited by the amount of yarn that I have, and trying to decide which colours to actually do, it's tough. What else have we got? I did do ash. So what I've tried to do is really take into consideration the colour of the stellina when I've been dyeing the yarn. So I've done things like Robin Egg, which is a very greyish sort of turquoise, and then Tide, of course, is the sort of teal, because I think that they really show off the gold sparkle. They do, I promise they do. I know it's hard to see. And they go nicely together as well. So again, I'm always thinking about which colours are going to go together, what you're actually going to be able to do. You know, you've got to be practical with these things. It's all very well sort of going mad on a creative level, but and that's fun and it's lovely, but you do have to be practical as well, because at the end of the day we're hopefully making things that we want to wear with these yarns. So yeah, that's my sensible side talking. I've got a new colourway here which I must show you, which I really like. I really love this colourway. Loganberry. I hope you can see that okay. It's sort of like reds and pinks, and it's dark and it's a bit dusky. Let's hold it up here and you can really see that hopefully. So yeah, that's new. Got Wild Orchid. I love Wild Orchid. It's just one of my favourites. Can you see that? Hopefully. So I've done Wild Orchid. Oh, another new one. It's kind of it's a variation on, well, they're all, I suppose they all are really, aren't they? But this is a variation on maybe like Little Owl. And this is Mountain Hare. So browns don't always sell well. They're very hit and miss. But I really, really love brown. So I just carry on doing it anyway and hoping for the best, really. And this is a blend of shades of brown. And I really hope you can see that. I've been wanting to do a Mountain Hare colourway for ages after we saw them in Ireland years ago. That's how organised I am. I did some Snow Leopard as well. Of course, if you're watching this in like 3 years' time, these are, I really hope, going to all be sold out. But of course, I do repeat most of my colours. Maybe not regularly, but as regularly as I possibly can. This is Snapdragon. This is a colourway that I created last year. Because we've got well, actually they won't come back this year because I've paved where the gravel was. But I had Snapdragons randomly growing in the gravel in the garden, and they're just so pretty. So with any luck, they might have self-seeded and they might come up somewhere else. Anyway, so that's Snapdragon. Oh, the dye pot. Look for this update. It was a really pretty one. Can you see that? It's quite floral, but a little bit zingy. That's really pretty as well. And now greens. So I don't generally do very saturated colours. I kind of think I might as well leave those to the experts and do what I prefer to do. However, when it comes to green, no amount of green is too much. So here we go, two of my favourite really saturated greens, Algae and Fern. And I've done Dale as well, which it goes really nicely with those two. That actually wasn't planned, but I just love these together because Dale's got green in it, just little flashes. There we go. With these colourways, when I'm doing them, I kind of feel like I'm doing almost doing like a watercolour painting, but in abstract. It's hard to describe really, but that's how these sort of colourways come about, and that's why they're so variable. And you just kind of add layer upon layer, and half the battle really is knowing when to stop. So that's Dale. Again, greens can be very hit and miss. I think, you know, people either love them or hate them. Obviously, I absolutely love them. So that's that lot. I've done Whispering Grass. That's another ECY classic. Actually, funnily enough, another quite hit and miss one. I think probably because it's a bit yellowy, but it goes well with a lot of other colours, especially pinks, which I'll show you in a sec. I know it's not what you would immediately think of as grass, but this is Whispering Grass as in like when you get the big tall long grasses, because I've got them in my garden and they're this colour. So that's why it's not green. Okay, pinks again. Love my pinks. I could honestly do whole updates of entirely pink. So I've done, let's just pop those there. Faded Bloom, Meadow Root, let's get these in a good order that makes sense. Red Goosefoot. Red Goosefoot is a plant. It's not just like totally random. And so I'm just digging yarn out without like dropping it everywhere. Here we go. Secret Garden, which is a variegated colourway. I really hope you can see that all right. Okay, it's got just little hints of green and brown to it. It's very pretty. So that's that. Meadow Root, I love Meadow Root. I do it really often because I like how it is pink, but it's so dusky and just a bit greyish and a bit off kilter, and I really like that. There you go, you can see it against something other than the pink that I'm wearing, which is completely different. And then these two, so I'm just showing you these two at the same time because there's Faded Bloom and that's Red Goosefoot. Red Goosefoot is the more pinky, slightly lighter one of the two. Faded Bloom's a lot more sort of dark and a little bit more moody, a bit more berryish, I would say. So yeah, there you go. Hopefully you can see those okay in the light. I've taken pictures comparing the two, but actually they don't look that different on my actual camera. I think on this video, hopefully you can see that they are a little bit different. I try to avoid doing such similar colours in one update because obviously it just seems a bit pointless. But I hadn't quite realised how similar they were until they were dry and finished. So those are colours. I won't bore you with any combinations. I've put a few up on social media, so I'll put some more up on the blog and stuff like that. But you've got, there's plenty of sort of blues. Where are we? Blues, greys, charcoal. So you've got all that kind of thing. And then there's the warmer colours, like these that I showed you earlier. These, I'm not sure whether I'd call that a warm colour or not really. It's got warm tones to it. Oh, I like those together. Oh, they're really nice. That's Loganberry, Mountain Hare, Woodpile and Copper Bucket. I like those together actually. And then, oh, you could put, yeah, you could put Meadow Rue with that lot. Oh, look at that. Oh, I love those together. What else have we got? I've covered the greens, actual proper greens rather than things like turquoise. Wild Orchid goes really well with Thunder. You could put Snapdragon with that as well. Oh, and Dipot look. So there we've got like a purpley sort of palette. They're really nice together. So plenty of choice. You could even go more high contrast with Snow Leopard and Charcoal. And finally, the one colour that I haven't actually shown you yet is this one. It's an ombre thing. Don't know what the word is. It's just an ombre. So it fades from dark Black Magic Rose up to white. I have to untwist this skein really to show you. Should have thought of this, shouldn't I, before I started the video. There you go. Can you see that? Okay, so these ombre skeins, I don't do them that often, but when I do, they're really, really popular. I must admit, I haven't knitted with one yet. I've got it stashed, I just haven't knitted with it yet. However, Laura is crocheting a shawl with a skein of Thunder ombre from a different update, and because it's modular, so it's a shawl and it's made in little diamonds, so each tiny diamond you get the full ombre effect, and then you get that repeating through the shawl. So when I do the blog post for this video, we'll put the link to that shawl, and I'll show you a picture of it, because it's kind of hard to describe really without actually showing you. So there we go. So yeah, that's the ombre skeins. I mean, they look completely different twisted up, obviously. But yeah, I must knit something up with them. If you have knitted with that kind of yarn and you want to show me what you've made with it and how it comes out, please do. That would be absolutely brilliant, because goodness knows when I'm going to get time to to do all these things. But I shall carry on. I'll carry on dyeing them every now and then, and yeah, eventually I will get a chance to knit some up. But yeah, do check out Laura's shawl. It's really, really pretty, and it really works with the ombre. Okay, so I think all that remains to be said about this is that we do also have mini skeins of it coming soon. They'll be 20 grams. I'm going to do some fade sets of those, definitely, because I am also knitting up in fact, I've got one of the skeins here. I'm knitting up a shawl design that I'm working on at the moment. If you're in our Facebook group, you'll have seen it. Hopefully, if you're watching this in the far future, said pattern will have been long since published. Who knows? We shall see. It's going well. It's knitting up well though, so hopefully that'll come out okay. So I'm using the Lowther lace, which is the Fluffy Baby alpaca, and a set of 5 Rosedale 4-ply mini skeins, which I've done in a fade. So I will definitely be dyeing more fades of the minis. It's going to take me quite a while to get those sorted. They're certainly not coming in this update. It'll be a few weeks. Mini skeins are really inefficient to dye, to process all of it. They're very inefficient, they're very time consuming. That's why they're, relatively speaking, they're quite expensive compared to full skeins. But they're very useful for things like doing little bundles of colours for stripes and things like that. So yeah, Rosedale 4-ply, 100 gram skeins this weekend, 20 gram mini skeins coming soon. I'm sure I'll let you know when. And yeah, I think, oh no, the remaining thing that I wanted to show you is we were talking about things that you could make with this yarn, and obviously so far I've just got my eggs, obviously, but it did strike me that you might be interested to see this. Now this was made in Nate Bee 4-ply, so not the same yarn. However, this is a 2-skein Fuss Free Festival shawl by Louise Tilbrook, and I put little bobbles on the ends and the centre. Actually, it's not centre because it's asymmetric, but you know what I mean. And I think the picot edge is part of the pattern. So yeah, the pattern calls for 1 skein, but this is what a 2-skein version looks like. It's not my first 2-skein Fuss Free Festival shawl, it has to be said. I absolutely love this pattern, and if you have got a heavily variegated yarn, this pattern, because of the varying row lengths, and actually this goes for many patterns, to be fair. Because of the varying row lengths, it breaks up those variegated yarns. So where in a jumper, especially a boxy one, you would get pooling, so you might get like a patch of purple and a patch of grey or whatever. With a pattern like this, that will break all of that up, and you're a lot less likely to get your colours pooling. And this 2 skein version, it's pretty huge. I really like this size of shawl. That's nice and cosy. You can see that that's not central. Just hide that under there. There we go. So yeah, that's a really good size for me. I prefer it to the 1 skein size, though I do have several of those as well, it has to be said. And that's nice and squishy. So something like this would be absolutely ideal for like 2 skeins of Wild Orchid, for example. That'd be so pretty. Or like the Mountain Hare, again, that'd be, in fact, I've nabbed a skein of that, so I might actually do that. You could stripe it, you can do all sorts with this pattern. And others. It just so happens that this is the one that I had to hand and thought, oh, actually, yeah, that's really useful. So yeah, it's nice and squidgy. Okay, so I hope that that's answered all of your questions. Probably hasn't. I'm sure I'll have forgotten loads of things and probably repeated loads of other things. If you do have any questions, obviously email us. There's a contact us form on the website. Join our Facebook group if you haven't already, the ECY Garden. You'll be asked to answer 3 questions, so please make sure that you do, so that we can invite you in. That'd be great. And yeah, I think that's probably everything, and you're probably sick of hearing from me now, so I shall go. Bye!